The Conservative Party is not a friendly environment if you're a Muslim. This Conservative government is virulently Islamophobic. Just look at the language used.
Certain ethnic groups, and I say British Pakistani males, hold cultural values totally at odds with British values.
Shocking language.
She said all British Pakistani males, and that includes Zayn Malik from One Direction, Adil Ray, who does Good Morning Britain, sports stars. It includes my dad.
Conservative activists believe all kinds of noxious conspiracy theories about Muslims.
One alleged member posted, "Muslims are an evil ideology who will never integrate." Another said the Berlin Wall should be rebuilt to keep the Musrats walled up. A third said, "Islam is an evil death cult that's invaded these shores and it's your God-given right to fight it."
There are only about 3 or 4 Tory MPs are Muslim out of more than 360 or so. They get penalised for being Muslim. Look at the experience of Nazrat Ghani, who I encouraged to go into politics. She was fired as a minister. She was told it was because her colleagues regarded her, or some of them did, as too Muslim. In the last couple of years, this phrase cancel culture has become really current, particularly peddled by the right. All I can say is Muslims have known all about cancel culture, and for much longer than the last 2 years. They have been subject to a deliberate, sustained campaign, being banished from any public event. I used to go, I was the political commentator of the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, year after year to Tory party conference. There would be Muslim events at the Tory conference, but nobody would ever go to them. And so I made a rule to myself that I would always accept these invitations. And for several years, invariably what would happen was I would get on the train up to Birmingham or Manchester for the conference, and I'd be rung up on the way by the organiser that he'd just been stopped. The event had been cancelled long before cancel culture became a phrase. But this is what these people had to put up with. They'd just been banned. And by the way, banned by the right. There's a secret list circulating saying you shouldn't go near him or her, or this organisation is very suspicious. And if any Tory politician had attended this event, they'd have gone on a list and he'd have been taken aside by the whip's office and threatened with, your political career will be over. About 10, 15 years ago, there was a huge battle inside the Conservative Party over policy towards Muslims. On the one hand, when the coalition came along, you had Saeeda Warsi, greatly loved by David Cameron. He saw her as a young Muslim woman, a mid-30s, business background, very cheerful. On the other hand, you have Michael Gove, who's very close to policy exchange and sees Islamism as a sort of mortal threat to everything going on in his world and in the West. And there was a battle, and I watched it. I talked to both of them. To begin with, Cameron on the side of Warsi. If something happened to Cameron, he was got hold of. Partly, I think, by the Murdoch press via his director of communications, and also Gove, but turned out to be the Neocons. The ascendant Neocons in the Conservative Party started to create a new policy, and it led to Cameron's muscular liberalism speech.
We've allowed the weakening of our collective identity. Under the doctrine of state multiculturalism, we've encouraged different cultures to live separate lives apart from each other and apart from the mainstream. We've even tolerated these segregated communities behaving in ways that run completely counter to our values.
Which set in motion the reframing of policy towards Islam, which led to the intensification of the prevent strategy and essentially more and more treating Muslims as what Saeeda Warsi called the enemy within.
I called it the enemy within because, first of all, it was something that I was called when I was at the cabinet table. I was referred to as the enemy at the table. But because it's a phrase that has been used throughout our history to describe various people who we feel do not belong or cannot be trusted, whether it was the Catholics or whether it was the Jewish community or whether it was the LGBT community more recently, socialists, minors, the Muslims are just the latest to be subjected to this insult.
They're no longer British citizens, our fellow citizens. They're a problem to be analysed, to be categorised, and to be sifted, and to have the way they think programmed. All the while, Blair, and then Cameron, and Cameron very much the heir to Blair, as he boasted politically but also intellectually, is reframing the idea of terrorism. It's a very powerful idea, terrorism. It scares people, rightly so, but they've widened it away from acts of violence to include thought crime. They did it through the invention of a phrase, non-violent extremism. Now, what is non-violent extremism? It's very important to try and think what it means, because it's totally subjective. Extremism is just a sort of relative position. It's a way of disagreeing with people and then counting them out of the debate. You say, oh, he's an extremist, we can't engage with him. It's actually the modern word for heretic. And non-violent means that he's on the route to being violent. What he's saying is things which could lead to violence. There's no scientific basis for this. In fact, it's better if you engage. If you have strong opinions, let them out. Let them out in the public square, challenge them. But the idea of non-violent is extremism delegitimizes these opinions, puts them back in front of a computer going quietly mad and afraid to talk out. They aren't full citizens. And one of the definitions of extremist, and it's so ironic it's not true this, is you're opposed to British values. That is another invention. It's an invention of recent years. The British, well, we were really confident about who we were. There was no notion of British values because Britain is a very capacious and generous identity. You can be British and Scottish, British and Jewish, British and Muslim. You can be a member of the SNP and want to break up Britain, but you're still British.
We're British.
I'm British. I'm British. I'm British. I'm British. I'm British.
I'm British.
I'm British.
We're British.
But they invented the idea of British values. There's a lot of people out there who aren't British, and they're Muslim. That's what they're really saying. They don't say it out loud, but that's what it means. It's so un-British. It's an attempt actually to turn us into America, where you have to be American, you have to wave the flag, you have to sing the Stars and Stripes. It worries me. I think it's a frightening development, and what worries me most of all is the next stage of it. The sadness is that Islam, Christianity and Judaism, very similar as religions. They're all monotheisms, they all come from the Middle East. A lot of the problem with Islam is ignorance. If you read the Quran, Jesus is venerated. There's more about Mary, Jesus' mother, in the Quran than there is in the Bible. At the heart of the teaching of the three religions is the golden rule: look after thy neighbour as thyself. All three religions worship the same God, the God of Abraham, and they are much more alike than they might care to recognize. And we all share a common humanity, and that's what matters most of all. Do you know, my book has been cold-shouldered, i.e. ignored, by the BBC, by ITV, by Sky News, by the whole Murdoch press, and by associated newspapers. It's amazing that somebody's taken an interest in it. So thank you very much to Double Down News, which does report stuff which the mainstream media doesn't want to know about. I strongly recommend you join them on Patreon.